The richest man in history, Mansa Musa, so rich that the amount of gold he gave out when he was passing through Cairo plummeted the price of gold in the territory, essentially wrecking the economy for 10 whole years. Experts have often described the amount of his wealth as unquantifiable because his possessions were so breathtaking that we may never be able to comprehend its true vastness. Who really was Mansa Musa? How did he acquire his insane wealth? Mansa Musa was born in 1280 into a family of rulers and nobles. Much of what we know about Mansa Musa's history and lineage is taken from the writings of Arab scholars like Al-Umari, Ibn Battuta, and Ibn Khaldun. Musa's grandfather was Abu Bakr Keita, the nephew of Sundiata Keita, the man widely considered to be the founder of the Malian Empire. Neither Mansa Musa's grandfather nor father, Bagalay, ascended to the throne, nor played a significant role in the history of Mali. Musa's brother, Mansa Abu Bakr II, ruled the Mali Empire before him. The empire under Abu Bakr's rule consisted of territory that formerly belonged to the Ghana Empire. He appointed Musa as his deputy. Musa held titles such as Lord of the Mines of Wangara, Emir of Mel, and Conqueror of Granada. 14th century Syrian historian Shabab al-Umari recounted that Abu Bakr was obsessed with the Atlantic Ocean and had a burning curiosity for what lay beyond it. So he abdicated the throne in 1312 and embarked on an expedition with a fleet of 2,000 ships and thousands of men, women, and slaves. They sailed off in search of whatever the ocean held on the other side, and they never returned. It is unclear what happened to Abu Bakr and his entourage. Some, like American historian Ivan Sertima, believed he reached South America. Although there is no evidence, he might have arrived elsewhere, gotten lost at sea, or worse, drowned. Nonetheless, at 32 years of age, Mansa Musa inherited the kingdom his brother left behind. He became the 10th Mansa, or conqueror, of the Mali Empire, who reigned from 1312 to 1337. Musa was a very successful military leader. Under his rule, the Mali Empire expanded significantly. He conquered 24 cities, including Timbuktu, extending the kingdom for about 2,000 miles. It stretched from the Atlantic Ocean to modern-day Niger, taking in parts of what are now Senegal, Mauritania, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, the Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, Guinea, and the Ivory Coast. All these territories came with many resources, especially gold, ivory, and salt. According to the British Museum, Musa's reign saw the Mali Empire become the sole custodian of almost half of the Old World's gold. And all this gold belonged to the king. Gold in this period was the most highly valued source of wealth in the medieval world. As the ruler, Musa had unlimited access to it, as well as access to other precious resources. In addition to access to all that gold, Musa's conquest brought major trading centers that traded in gold and other goods, and he accumulated more riches from this trade. At the peak of the Mali Empire, Mansa Musa had a net worth the same as the modern equivalent of $400 billion. One of the highlights of Musa's reign was his pilgrimage to Mecca between 1324 and 1325. Mali was home to almost half the total supply of gold, but the kingdom was not well known for Musa's pilgrimage. This changed when Mansa Musa, a devout Muslim, decided to go on Hajj to Mecca, passing through the Sahara Desert and Egypt. Legend has it that Musa left Mali with a caravan of 60,000 men. He traveled with his entire royal court and officials, soldiers, griots, or entertainers, merchants, camel drivers, and 12,000 slaves, as well as a long train of goats and sheep for food. Essentially, Musa's caravan was a city moving through the desert. Everyone on the caravan, all the way down to the slaves, was adorned with gold brocade and the finest Persian silk. They had 100 camels in tow, each carrying hundreds of pounds of pure gold. It was a breathtaking sight, but the splendor was not really appreciated until the caravan reached Cairo, where they could show off their wealth. When Musa and his entourage arrived at the outskirts of Cairo, they camped for 3 days at the pyramids of Giza. Afterward, they crossed the Nile into Cairo, where Musa met the Mamluk, Sultan al-Nasir Muhammad. The Sultan's reign had already seen one Mansa, Sakura, make the Hajj. He expected Musa to prostrate himself before him, but Musa initially refused. When he finally bowed, he said he was bowing for God alone. Still, Musa and al-Nasir got along well and exchanged gifts. Musa and his entourage stayed in the Carafa district of Cairo, where he befriended the city's governor, Ibn Amir Hajib, who learned much about Mali from him. Musa remained in Cairo for 3 months before departing for Mecca. When al-Umari visited Cairo 12 years after Mansa Musa, he was surprised at how highly the people spoke of him. This tells how much of an impression the Golden King left on the city. During his 3-month stay in Cairo, he gave out gold to the impoverished citizens he met so lavishly that the price of gold plummeted in the region for 10 years, and the economy was wrecked. He also traded gold in various cities, in addition to building mosques along the route. Musa's pilgrimage and the resulting gold depreciation led to about $1.5 billion, or 1.1 billion pounds worth of economic losses across the Middle East. This time in history marks the only time one man controlled the entire gold industry and pricing. While Musa was in Mecca, conflict broke out between a group of Malian pilgrims and a group of Turkic pilgrims in the Masjid al-Haram. Swords were drawn, and the conflict might have led to bloodshed. But before the situation escalated further, Musa persuaded his men to back down. Back home, Mansa Musa passed through Egypt again, but this time, the journey was not as smooth as the first one. By the time they reached Suez, many Malian pilgrims and his entourage had died of cold, starvation, or bandit raids, and they had lost many of their supplies. Some accounts say Musa was forced to borrow gold from lenders and merchants in Cairo after losing almost all his supplies. Others say he tried to help Cairo's economy by removing some of the gold from circulation. He would borrow it back at extremely high interest rates from Egyptian lenders. According to Lucy Duran of the School of African and Oriental Studies in London, the Malian griots, who are singing historian storytellers, were upset with Musa. They didn't like to praise him in their songs because they felt he wasted local resources outside the empire. Despite the amount of gold Musa spent or wasted during his pilgrimage, his excessive generosity endeared him to the rest of the world. The Mali Empire went from this territory in West Africa to an internationally recognized empire. Mansa Musa had literally put himself and his kingdom on the map. A drawing of an African king sits on a golden throne atop Timbuktu, holding a piece of gold in his hand. That would be none other than the extraordinary Mansa Musa. In a way, Timbuktu became an African El Dorado that attracted people from near and far who wanted to have a glimpse. Even up till the 19th century, Timbuktu still had a mythical status as a lost city of gold at the edge of the world. Musa's exploits from 500 years earlier left such an impression that it drew both European fortune hunters and explorers from centuries. Mansa Musa did not just go to Mecca to flaunt his wealth along the way. When he had completed his Hajj rites, he sought out several Islamic scholars, some of whom were direct descendants to the Prophet Muhammad, to take back his kingdom. Among them was an Andalusian poet and architect, Abu Ishaq es-Saheli, who is widely credited with designing the famous Jingareber Mosque. Legend has it that Musa paid the architect 200 kilograms, or 440 pounds in gold, for his design, which in today's money would be $8.2 million, or 6.3 million pounds. By bringing scholars to the empire, Musa displayed his love for education. He encouraged the arts and architecture, funded literature, and built schools, libraries, and mosques. Timbuktu soon became a center of trade, culture, and education. People came from around the world to study what would become of Sankora University. During Mansa Musa's reign, the University of Sankore developed one of the largest libraries in the world, with roughly 1 million manuscripts, rivaling the Library of Alexandria. Timbuktu developed such a prominent reputation that traders in southern European cities like Venice and Genoa started adding Timbuktu to their trading routes. Musa is often credited with starting the tradition of education in West Africa. He is also widely considered one of the wealthiest historical figures in history, due in part to the amount of gold that Mali produced during his reign. Mansa Musa died in 1337, at age 57. His sons inherited the empire, but they could not hold the empire together. The smaller stakes broke off, and the empire crumbled. The arrival of the Europeans in the region finally led to the empire's complete disintegration. If you thought that story was crazy,